Well, good afternoon. Thank you for waiting. We had some technical stuff to do and the like. I'd like to first thank the Surretts for making this space possible and allowing this incredible mandala to be constructed over the past week and a half. As you can see, it is almost complete. They'll be completing it tomorrow, saying some prayers. Rinpoche will be giving a talk on the meaning of mandala, and then they're going to start the ritual to dismantle the sand mandala and distribute the sand, and then find a body of running water to distribute the sand so it goes back to its natural elements. We're very fortunate today to have with us Geshe Lobsang Tenzin Negi, PhD, from Emory University, that is developing a whole new program on cognitive meditation techniques, using all of the wisdom and knowledge that the Tibetans have known for centuries. Geshe, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for the introduction, Harman. It's always a pleasure to come here in Santa Fe, and for so many years we have been blessed to have wonderful friends here. The Marsha and Harman, Sylvia and Ira, and the whole family, and the great community here. Our monks have been coming here for many years. I have been here a number of occasions. Actually, first time I came here was '89, believe it or not, in 1989. Each time, to be here is very special for me, and I'm sure that for my colleagues and the monks from the Muslim monastery as well. What we would like to do is, as Harman mentioned, this is a workshop, so it's not going to be just lecture. I'm a lecturer, so I love to lecture, but I have to make sure that I don't just get carried away with lecturing. And so I will request, if you have any questions, if at any point, please don't hesitate to raise your hand, and then we can have the question right there. There's a quick clarification if you need. We can do that. My plan for this afternoon is that we will begin with a brief chanting, just to kind of create the atmosphere. Of course, we don't need to create atmosphere really. I mean, that there is the mandala is here, all the beautiful, the spiritual arts and the inspiring other arts, and the presence of all of us, all of you. It itself is a sacred space. But nonetheless, we would like to do a brief chanting to invoke what we call the presence of enlightened beings, make a brief homage to the enlightened presence, a brief sense of gratitude, appreciation for the many blessings that we continue to receive from great, spiritual forces and beings on this planet. So in that way, just to create a brief atmosphere for the discussion and the reflection on compassion. Once the chanting is done, then I will do a brief presentation based on a few slides that I have, just to give you a sense of what compassion means from a specific tradition that I come from. We can see what benefits we can see through scientific lens, some of the kind of emerging benefits that we are seeing today. How can we cultivate if compassion is something that we can develop and enhance are there ways to cultivate it? And then I'll present a specific model called the cognitively based compassion training, and I'll say more about that. And then after that, we can take just a short break, just to stretch ourselves, and then we can do some meditation. And then when we do the meditation, there will be a little bit more chanting there, and then we can have some discussions and end at the end with another brief chanting. Does that sound okay? So with that plan in place, let's begin first just to kind of set the environment for our kind of reflection on compassion. And as the chantings are done, you don't need to think of in a kind of strict religious sense. Just think of this, whatever the sacredness means to you, just to let such sacred space unfold. That we are content in that space. You just allow that space unfold as the chantings are done, and then we will proceed with the remaining of the program. So, with this, I guess, space that is set up with this chanting, let me say a few words about the human power on compassion and some of the insights that we find emerging through scientific studies this time, and then how to cultivate this. So,
hold on, I'm saying it needs to be a little higher.
yes. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to say a little bit about what the compassion is, that some of the insights that we find in the scientific field today that are emerging from the studies on meditation, particularly on compassion, and then how to cultivate compassion, how to expand really that, not so much about how to cultivate new, but we all have the potential, but and to certain degrees we all experience compassion, but how to expand it. So that's what I want to talk. What is compassion? So first of all, we need to get to understand what is meant by compassion. Of course, it means the word itself can convey different meaning. I understand that actually in Spanish, compassion, when it's translated in Spanish, often it comes as pity, which is definitely not what Nyingje in Tibetan, the word Nyingje, that is translated as compassion, convey. For His Holiness the Dalai Lama, for example, as he says that compassion is understood mainly in terms of empathy, our capacity to kind of feel for others' situation, others' predicament, others' vulnerabilities, others' distress and the suffering. In a way, that compassion is a quality, it has an affective, an emotional dimension. That it's not just knowing in head, but rather it has to do with the feeling for someone. So certainly that His Holiness the Dalai Lama refers to as spiritual principle, that the spiritual principle from which all positive inner values emerge. And the choice of term spiritual value is, I think, very telling. In a book that he wrote at the turn of the millennium called The Ethics for the New Millennium, in which His Holiness calls for a revolution. He says that a new revolution is needed, but the revolution for spiritual, kind of spiritual revolution, not of economics, not of political, not the religious, but spiritual revolution. And when he talks about the spiritual revolution, he's talking about need to cultivate basic human values like compassion, like love, the caring for others, forgiveness. These are the qualities that he refers to as spiritual values, but also these are the basic human values. These are not religious, just simply religious values. That for him, the religion has quite limited scope. Spirituality has to do with our basic human nature, human values. So it's those basic human values are universal. They are important, of course, in the spiritual context, in the religious context, Buddhist, Christian, Hindu, Muslims, and so forth. All recognize the importance of these basic human values and make this as the foundation of their religious message. But these values are not limited to religious traditions. In fact, that he talks about, perhaps these values have developed way before we have religions on this earth. Religions are quite recent development in the human societies. Basic capacity to feel for others, empathize, and have compassion for others, cooperation, trust, all these this, we need it, our human societies need it way before we came up with the religion. Even before human development, the animal societies also had to have these basic tools that are so crucial for their survival. And so therefore, certainly when we talk about the compassion, we're talking about that basic human values. Human values, important for religious traditions, but it transcends religious boundaries. Why would His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the many scientists today that actually pay attention to these basic human values? Why do they put so much effort in promoting and encouraging others to cultivate these qualities? Obviously, the compassion is so crucial for our own survival. In our social circles, if we are lacking compassion, that we will wither. The human societies will, without this warmth that we can feel towards someone, towards our family members and other people around, or if we don't receive it, that it will certainly have a tremendous impact on our physical health, emotional well-being, and our relationship, just overall quality of life. So, do we see any kind of evidence, scientific evidence, do qualities like love, compassion, these really contribute to this basic human flourishing or the qualities of life? Certainly that humanity has intuitively known the need for these qualities, and that's why we see in all religions, or the humanistic approaches as well. But this is something that as His Holiness says, that the compassion is something that is like the foundation from which all the other qualities like the forgiveness and so forth emerge. That he talks about that compassion is something so crucial for our survival. If we want happiness for ourselves, we should practice compassion. If we want others to have happiness, if we want to promote happiness, contribute to others' happiness, we should cultivate compassion, practice compassion. With the compassion, we can't go wrong. It's something that when we feel compassion, we will benefit from it. If we extended compassion for others, then others benefit from that. So, but we live in a scientific era. That for whatever reasons, there's many centuries of spiritual, the religious traditions that have encouraged us to cultivate this, but for some reason, in the recent centuries, that we have lost some confidence in the religious kind of traditions. But science does carry a lot of force in today's world, in the scientific culture. So it's not that the spiritual traditions have failed. It's just simply that that we, to some extent, failed to see or the message of those wisdom spiritual traditions. We failed to kind of really find conviction in that. But the science is something that we, our modern society has this intuitive, feeling of that if the science demonstrates something that we think that this has more validity. And in many ways it is not without foundation, of course. That for in many fields the science is a discipline, a method, a tradition that meticulously, very carefully observes and produces results that are replicable, that can be kind of replicated. So therefore, of course, that it has, its reasons, for we have reasons to have a greater, to certain kind of conviction in scientific outcomes. So therefore, what has been happening in the last 30-some years, at least, I mean, it probably, goes way back, and many great thinkers certainly have encouraged a careful kind of observation of these qualities in the human societies. Of course, that it goes way back. But in 1987 or so, 87 actually, it may have been in 1986 or so, when His Holiness the Dalai Lama, he did, work with some scientists, like the most well-known Francisco Varela, who is not alive today, but who was a neuroscientist, a brilliant scientist, but also aware of these contemplative traditions. Also, he himself was a meditator, and so in their kind of the discussions, they felt that there was a need to form a very kind of systematic, exploration of the benefits of contemplations, the meditations, and these basic human values. And also for His Holiness, it was also to learn from the scientists how the scientists understand the mind and emotions, and their role for our human flourishing and so forth. So therefore, they formed this organization called the Mind and Life Institute, and their first in-depth conversation actually took place in 1987 at His Holiness the Dalai Lama's residence in Dharamsala. And I remember, that I wasn't there, but I remember the conversation taking place. Since then, that there has been a huge, a tremendous kind of advancement in understanding of the role of meditation and the emotions, the scientific outcomes, our scientific, insights into the benefits of meditation and so forth. And then obviously, as Harman mentioned earlier, that today, like the contemplative practice known as mindfulness, that it's all over. There are many clinical settings that offer mindfulness as one of the interventions, for all kinds of issues, whether it's to do with dealing with addiction, or just a relationship, or even to how to prevent relapse from depression, to the speedier recovery from various ailments, including psoriasis, the very kind of the stressed, induced the skin disease and so forth. So mindfulness has just exploded, and not as a religious practice, but as a contemplative practice, of course, but something as a secular, way of practicing that about kind of changing inner life, through which then we can see how our own external kind of life changes. So. And it's growing. That just recently there was a conference in Boston organized by Mind and Life Institute. This was their second international conference, what is known as the International Symposium on Contemplative, on Contemplative Studies. International Symposium on Contemplative Studies. The first one was held in Colorado 2 years ago, and then this time in Boston. Over 1,700 researchers that participating in that conference, presenting their research in different fields, whether mindfulness or compassion and so forth and so on. So it's growing. Back in 2002, 2003, at Emory University, university itself was going through some challenges with the mental health issues. On the campus there were several suicides among the students because it's quite stressful to be in the college also, and with all the challenges and demands on life and uncertainties and so forth. I guess that this is something that the social scientists said, that the stress level in the colleges is rising, that continuously, and it takes a tremendous human toll on the control of health, including suicide and so forth. So in 2002, 2003, when I was teaching a course there on Tibetan Buddhism, just to refer to as this psychology of enlightenment, one of the students actually found that there are elements in this course that could be very helpful for mental health, in enhancing kind of mental health that the students were struggling with on the campus, and encouraged that we create some kind of program. And I happened to be it happened to be a kind of a fortunate time. One of my colleagues at the medical school at Emory, a scientist, Dr. Charles Rezan, who had the keen interest in studying meditation, to see the benefits of meditation. So he and I, that we teamed up, and then we kind of designed a study to measure or to kind of test if some form of meditation can have benefits, in terms of creating that buffer from the excessive stress among the school population. As we were to create a study protocol, the mindfulness meditation was already kind of studied quite extensively, and it was growing, so there was really, we'll be kind of duplicating, what's already happening. That was one reason that I chose to develop a protocol on compassion. But another reason was that compassion, as you saw His Holiness mentioning, that compassion is a human quality that from where, if we cultivate, or the process of cultivating this involves enhancing many other human qualities of forgiveness and so forth and so on. In the Indo-Tibetan Buddhist tradition, there is a huge body of kind of information about cultivating these qualities, and drawing from that. So I created this cognitive-based compassion training protocol, and then we studied with the freshman students. So I will not, go into much details about the scientific part, but just so that you have a sense of what we found. These are the studies done with the freshman college students, first-year college students, and they said the freshman year is particularly stressful, in the college, and what we wanted to test was if compassion training can show some difference in terms of responding to stress, psychosocial stress particularly, among the students. We know that the chronic stress is perhaps one of the most prevalent conditions for all kinds of our, problems in today's world. Certainly physical health, whether it's to do with Alzheimer's or the cardiovascular illnesses, you name it, cancers, and just the chronic fatigue, whatever it is, how poorly it may be understood about lack of energy and so forth. And these kind of chronic stress not only affect our physical health, but also emotional state, but also they affect our relationship. That if the chronic stress kind of contributes into some ways to our depression, for example, we know that how we when we struggle with depression, that how it affects the overall function of our life, from the relationship to responsibility to work and, all levels. So for a society itself, the cost of depression is, in billions of dollars of kind of the cost also, right? But that's just the, the money. But real tragedy is that how many human lives are affected by, when we suffer with depression, for example. And then we know that there's, same thing with the heart attacks or the Alzheimer's and, all kinds of other illnesses that we are, facing today. They have a real cost on human lives. So how can we measure stress? The good thing is that we know, there are very, very good ways to measure stress. There are certain biological markers. For example, IL-6, that is one of the ways that in the immune system that you can measure that in terms of the inflammation. And this is a particular stress response of the immune system, but it manifests as inflammation. And we know today that inflammation that is a cause that or correlated, if that way, to what extent direct cause or not, but correlated with many of our illnesses today. So that's a good way to measure would be that inflammation in the immune system. Another classical kind of bodily biochemical that is related with stress is cortisol, right? It's a classic cortisol stress hormone, and that's another thing that we can actually, this is sort of the real, physical, elements that we can actually measure, how much or how less you have. And there is a good science that shows that elevated levels of both of these biochemicals are, correlated with many of the illnesses that we are talking about. And so therefore, we wanted to test to make it short, what we found was that in the freshman college students, when they were put in two groups, and the meditation group, when they came to the class twice a week, get the class, and then they were encouraged to do the meditation of their own. They were given some recordings, the guided meditations. We found that those who are termed as high practice, meaning that the students who actually did some practice, they're not much actually, and about 90 minutes per week. That when we divided a group that put about 90 minutes per week to those who put less, that those were termed as low practice. And as you can see, on the top, panel there, on the left, to your left, the top, that was before 6 weeks of training. There is literally no difference between those who actually practice outside the class or who just get to class and not practice. There is no difference. But after 6 weeks of training, there is a clear distinction between the two groups. A high practice group, that had significantly lower inflammation, IL-6 in their blood system, in their immune. So that is very encouraging. Same thing with the cortisol. Cortisol levels are, these are stress hormones that when we are challenged with certain, challenges, of course, our biology is built in such a way to respond with stress, response, right? But when there is a challenge, we need to be able to mount stress. But then when the challenge is gone, then if we still remain like that, there is danger still, that's where we will keep kind of pumping the stress hormone in our system, and then it gets too much that damages our own body, right? So what would be a good way to respond to the stress is when there is a challenge, you mount the stress response, cortisol release, the cortisol, your brain releases cortisol. When the challenge is no more there, then your system kind of calms down, that the cortisol levels goes down. That is the measure of resiliency. That Robert Sapolsky, that one of the really the great researcher on stress, that he wrote a book called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. And it has basically pointing out that we humans are so complicated, have become so complicated. We live in our heads, that so much that. And like zebras, when there is a danger, they will run away or to fight, and then, or if they need food, that whatever energy they have to exert, they will exert, and then when it's challenges met, then they calm down, chill out, yes, and no need to get ulcers, but the human beings, we are not like that. If we had a little argument with someone, that that we took it like that, that is just kind of destroying me. It's literally like that, our primitive brains, the deep brain, if it takes like that, it's kind of the survival issue. And then that little, argument is gone, but we go home and still stay ruminating. And that maybe that, many hours, just unable to sleep and so forth. And then, basically that, it's continuously just releasing, that bombarding body with cortisol. So on the lower bar there where you can see, that when we found in the students the same thing. The students, when they were put into this very stressful situation, it's a particular stress test called the TSST, that anyone will get stressed in that situation. And then that was there are drawn blood to measure those cortisols. So what we found, but then, of course, that when they are in that 15-minute stressful task, that it shows that your stress levels have gone up in terms of the cortisol. But then their cortisol levels drop down much faster. This black line, that graph on your right, on the bottom part, you can see that it drops down, much more quickly. So that is the sign of resiliency that was taken. So that's what was something that we found. It was very inspiring, encouraging, and it led us to design another study for 5 years. We went ahead and applied for grants from NIH and then got a grant for 5 years study. And that was to do with, and the reviewers, they insisted that we do, not with the students, we have already done with the students, do it with the, further grown-up population. So that's what we did with Emory and the larger Atlanta community, recruiting people, voluntarily. So that was done for 5 years. So again, I want to kind of summarize this quickly. And this was done for 5 years, and we collected a lot of data, and it's something that it will take years to analyze much of the data. Of course, it requires need a lot of kind of the funding to to do this the data analysis. So we have done just a fraction of what the data we have so far. But I just want to share one of these here. One of our colleagues, Gail DeBortis, she is a neuroscientist on our team. She actually was in Atlanta, but then she moved to Harvard in Boston, and when the study actually was finally launched. But she flew the people who went into the meditation. So in this study, it's called the CALM study. It's a compassion and attention training. It's a longitudinal study. We had 3 groups. One group practiced just attention part, the mindfulness part. Another group practiced the full process of attention and compassion. So this CBCT, what we call it, CBCT stands for cognitive-based compassion training. It has 6 modules basically, but the first 2 modules are more, it's about creating foundation, that's about the mindfulness, but then the others go into self-compassion and so forth. And then so the second group did the full compassion practice, and then third group was control, that is, they did not do any meditation, they got together and had discussion about some health topics, with what to, and then they had someone who would assist with the discussions. So the 3 groups that we had, and this particular one has to do with measuring amygdala activation. Is that part of the brain deep in our brain? Amygdala is a part of the brain often associated with fear. That is certainly the negative emotions. And what Gail wanted to do was to bring these people before 8 weeks, and this was for 8 weeks of study, to Boston and put them into these brain imaging machines, fMRI machines, and then show them 3 images. One negative image that you can see in the red, and then positive in the green, and then the gray one is the neutral image. Like the negative images could be just the bodies that are really kind of the wounded and so forth, or positive images can be really good. The people have a picnic and enjoying and so forth. That the neutral can be just the other images. So wanted to see how these people are responding to these images, how their amygdala responds to that. So before 8 weeks and afterwards, and in this there were 3 groups, right? But here she only this one only shows mindfulness only and the compassion group. But the discussion group also, is more or less same as the mindfulness part, or there's no difference. But in this case, what you can see here is that when they were given this, shown these images before they were given this 8 weeks of training, actually, that there is no significant difference in terms of how, how strongly they responded to these 3 images. For all 3 images, they have no significant difference. After the meditation, so that is the left on the top part is with the mindfulness, the mindfulness. After 8 weeks of meditation, there is a significant difference. Apparently, this is significant enough. The activation in the amygdala was, much lesser. In the compassion group, though, the same thing. Before the 8 week of training, no significant difference in how they reacted to those 3 different images. But after the 8 week of training, actually for the neutral and positive, there is no difference, much of the difference. But for the negative image, that people wounded or that really suffering, there was a much stronger activation in the amygdala. So, one would think that, oh, this is not good, that they are more afraid, they are more anxious. That would be one interpretation of that. So the compassion is not helping. But that may not be the case, that because there are some other studies, like the Richie Davidson at the University of Wisconsin, who is the kind of the, meditation scientist, he also found that actually people who have been meditating for a long time, like what you call the adapt meditators, they responded to these negative images much strongly. Also, the amygdala activation was also strong. What he found also was that if someone is anxious, like fearful and anxious, kind of sort of negatively, your heart rate also goes up, like when you are anxious. But paradoxically, that he was seeing that in these adapt meditators, amygdala activation is, super activated. But then heart rate is kind of down, that slow. So it doesn't fit with the kind of the classic explanation, like the mental activation means you are nervous and then fearful and anxious because your heart is telling you different thing. So, that one interpretation could have been, that perhaps, that you are processing that negative image in a way where you are not becoming anxious. And that is actually, when it comes to compassion, with our social human animals like us, this might be very useful actually, that it may be the marker of empathy. That to empathy, if empathy has to do with our capacity to, attune to others' suffering, others' situations. But at the same way, not getting anxious. That would not lead you to become nervous and anxious. That you would be much more likely to extend help, or at least not be affected by that. So therefore, in this, when seeing this, because the guy was careful, that to give some other kind of the measures also. So she had given the same subjects also this test to measure their depression. Depression score, they are very reliable questionnaire through which the clinical study that you give this questionnaire to determine that how likely one might be kind of vulnerable for depression or depressed and not. So they are very kind of reliable way of finding out through the questionnaire, through the self-report of course. And that's why she had given that. The thing is that what she found consistent with what Geshe Davidson was doing with the heart, she found that, while in the attention only, mindfulness attention, there was, this, of course, the activation to the negative images is down, but also, that the depression score before 8 weeks and after 8 weeks, there's really no difference. But in the compassion group, they seem to be much less depressed. That their depression score is much lower. That you can see that with this little star sign after, that's after 8 weeks of training in the compassion. So that is, one of the various studies that the CAM study, and actually there are many others that are being done. There are others also published, even the kind of the structural changes in parts of the brain with the memory and something called the ventral medial prefrontal cortex, the frontal part of the brain that is understood to involve in empathy and like that. There seems to be that actual expansion in that part of the brain. That article is in the process of getting published now. It's not out yet. But what we have done, so that's one way of looking at that. What we have done also is that if the compassion can be taught, can we bring that to very, kind of, population that is affected by the abuses and like that, like the foster care, and the foster care children. And that's what we have done. The commissioner of the Georgia's Human Division of Human Services, that oversees this foster care program. She was very kind to invite us to bring this. And in her own words, actually it's very telling why she says that why she wants to bring compassion is not because they have any lack of programs for the kids, but she says that they are all about fixing external kind of environment. She felt that there needs to be something that we need to change inside, and then she felt that the compassion training is something that's about changing our inner landscape, that through which we interact with the out differently. Right? So that with that we have given this in the foster care system, and again just to make it short, what we measured, it's hard to actually, you can't really go and draw blood with that population. It's you will not get approval for those, but there are other non-invasive ways of measuring the inflammation, that is stress reaction, particularly a response called, in the chemical called C-reactive protein. This is also mentioned in the immune function and in inflammation. And then you can collect it through saliva, so it's easier to collect saliva. So that was what done, and then again, consistent with other studies, with what we found is, this part has to do with the inflammation. Is you can see that the low and the high practice group, that what you compare after they were given this 10, 12 weeks of training to them. The low practice students who came to but did not really practice, you didn't see that much reduction in the C-reactive protein, actually is quite high. In the compassion high practice group, that's significantly lower, like degrees of the stress hormones or the stress response is measured in the C-reactive protein. That's one thing. But the other part is that the psychologically also we all, of course, that when we go through tough times, that it's very easy for us to become discouraged, hopeless, and so forth. And these are some of the markers for our depression and so forth and so on, right? So, they were also given this kind of the test to measure the hopefulness, how hopeful and so forth. And then there again, you find that in the low practice group, actually, that they were compared to before and after, that there's no difference, and maybe even seems a little bit less, it's kind of strange. But the high practice group, in this part, in the more hope group, is the high practice, high CBCT, and high compassion practice, their hopefulness is much greater. So it seems like that in the high risk children also, it seems like that. So that's, there was one, how young you can bring this kind of the training to, that's the challenge, right? So what, next part what we did was that, can we teach this to the kids in the elementary school? So we actually offered in 2 different schools, one private school called Pioneer. It's a very it's a wonderful school, but it's a private school. And then one public school, in the Morningside School in Atlanta. So, of course, it's a huge challenge to teach second, third grade students, 6, 7 years kids. Much challenge, more challenging for them to, you can't really ask them to sit and close eyes and sit still. So you have to come up with various ways to introduce the meditation, including sitting still as well. The beauty of cognitively based compassion training is that as the term suggests, cognitively, it has to do with bringing certain shifts in our perspective about how we see us, others, and so forth. So that part doesn't need to be done by sitting, with eyes closed, right? It can be done through exercises, through plays, through role modeling, through the communications, like that. So what was measured in this is what's called the social. It's a social circle test. It has to do with how connected we feel with others. How many people we feel connected. That's so. If people are, if in our inner circles there are very few people that, and those are not only quality of that, the inner and the circle, it kind of points to how close we feel, how closely, the quality of our sense of closeness. And obviously the social scientists have shown, I mean, there's a lot of evidence there that people who have more rich kind of circle of people around, I mean, there's a richer sense of connectedness with others, they seem to flourish well health-wise and all kinds of measures that they seem to do better, including mortality and so forth. So in this study, that what we are trying to, in our group, try to do is to measure in these students, as they were taught this for 12 weeks, to see if their social circle gets thicker and expands. And what we've, again, just to kind of make it short, one class was taught just mindfulness, other class was taught the full process of mindfulness and compassion. So that's what you see here, that the top bar has to do with CBCT, the cognitive-based compassion training. Full, the lower part has to do with the mindfulness. What you see there is that both do well. That both interventions or the practices help them connect well with others. But compassion part seems to be the one that actually is, significantly basic, more kind of expansion of the social circle. Not only when they bring in their inner circles people from their communities, the people they know outside of the school and that they class, but even in class, inclusion in inner circle that expects in the compassion group. So that's for the social scientists, it seems to be a very significant outcome, that a good predictor of good health, and the flourishing in life, and certainly the academic performance and so forth and so on. If you are not, that if you are mentally healthy, emotionally healthy, of course, you will do better. Not just physical health, but also with your education and so forth and so on. So those are some of the studies that we wanted to, and these studies are actually, expanding on the way now, bringing these programs to veterans. They try to study with veterans. We have been teaching in the medical school, and Emory has a very good medical school, and we just finished teaching at 10 weeks of this training for the second year medical students to again see if those who were given compassion training versus those who did not, if they differ in ways that with the depression and otherwise in year 3, 4, because in the medical community, that it's a really huge challenge. I'm sure that you all know that. The recent article in New York Times, it says that by the third or fourth year of medical school, that over 30% of the students have kind of full-blown depression. Over 10% or so have serious thought about kind of suicides and like that. It's a real challenge in the medical community, and then that this empathy fatigue that they talk about the nurses and caregivers and so forth. So it would be, this is something that that those people who are giving care to others, who are taking care of others, that to us when we are sick and ill and so forth and so on, that how their own lives are affected by such kind of stress and so forth and so on. If there is a way that they can, to some extent, it can be protected from such like the empathy fatigues and so forth and so on, and that it would be not only good for them, the caregivers, but for the rest of us, for the rest of the society also. So we have a very kind of a visionary dean in the medical school at Emory University. He sees this, he's a meditator himself, and he brings this to his community, but also to the students. So that's, and then a number of other in the schools, we are teaching in the schools, and to cancer survivors, to those suicide survivors, and like that. So the study, scientific study is growing. Now, can we really teach how that compassion? I mean, can we really expand our capacity for compassion? So, as I mentioned, that it's a no-brainer for those in the spiritual traditions, right? All the spiritual traditions say that yes, of course, we should treat our neighbors and that we want to be treated by them, and then that is all his idea is that we can begin to kind of expand this. But what does scientists say? That in the scientific field you see thinkers like Albert Einstein, I mean that how what more in the science we want to see beyond Einstein, right? The genius. You look at that, what he said, that about the compassion. A human being is a part of a whole called by us universe. I mean, it's calling for that we are as part of this. That whole part limited in time and space. We experience ourselves. So basically, and you can read this one, but it's incredible that back in like the early 20th century, where what he's pointing out that this is today, that it's being recognized by the evolutionary scientists and the neuroscientists and the healthcare professionals and so forth. The impact of being kind of focused on just excessively on oneself, missing the point that we are connected with others, we are interdependent, like this self-absorption is so destructive for our own well-being. How it affects. That's what he's talking about. That this is like kind of that optical illusion is like a prison. The excessive focus on one's own interest. That it's actually very counterproductive. But this is something that unfortunately, that with this, at times that as a culture, I mean, that the modern culture seems to kind of, value like this like, kind of extreme individualism. The individualism is great, don't get me wrong, but extreme individualism just, that all it matters is that how I get rich and powerful, and that make my, American dream, that whether it comes with the cost of others or not. And that is, in the end, it's a very destructive, for ourselves and for others. And that's what Einstein is pointing out in this, and that's why he talks about, that the compassion with is something that he sees that we can expand it from few nearest us to include all, living beings, including the nature in its beauty. True value of human being is determined by the measure and the sense in which they have obtained liberation from the self, like that with the capital S probably, that me at the center of the universe, when the kind of world begins and ends with me. That kind of attitude, that kind of perspective is very, counterproductive. So that's why he calls for, a very new manner of thinking. He says that we shall require a substantially new manner of thinking if humanity is to survive. Who would have thought in those times, that which is so clear now, that we know how interdependent we are, how small the world is, so that our lives are just completely intertwined with others. not just our neighbors, but neighboring countries, people in other parts of the world. We are one family, truly. And that's why that today we see this, the tremendous awareness about the environmental protection, that all this. This comes with the sense that what happens to the waters, the glaciers in other parts of the world, and so forth and so on, has a direct impact on us, what other people do in other parts and so forth. So the interdependence is what I think that Einstein is presenting, and where he says that is also that we should expand our compassion. He clearly saw this can be done. Another great scientist, Charles Darwin, the father of evolution himself, in the descent of man, that he proposed in more uncertain terms the importance of sympathy, our capacity to feel for others. He saw through his careful observations that sympathy or the empathy, or the compassion, that sympathy leading to the more compassionate. He saw that these are very essential tools, in our survival kit, that the nature has kind of designed for the species. That in his observation, he found that in the animal species where there are, the greater kind of exhibition of the sympathy towards more members of its species, those species thrived. Where it was lacking, those species perished. So we know that being excessively selfish and inconsiderate of others and so forth, we cannot flourish. That we are social animals, social beings. We thrive when there is a greater trust among people. But even within the family members, think about the family, even like a 2-3 member family unit. If there is suspicion and distrust among each other, that family would be not kind of in a good mental state. There won't be harmony and so forth. When there is a trust, cooperation, and that's where the family will flourish. Same thing can happen. Happens for the workplace, in our community, in the nation, and so forth. So the idea that the compassion of or is produced, that is empathy, these are something that nature has obviously favored the evolution, because they optimize our survival. My mother actually, I come from a very remote Himalayas, absolutely. When I was growing up as a kid, it was nothing. Just whatever you grow up, you live on that. I haven't tasted white sugar until I was 11. That kind of gives you a sense of how remote. My mother used to tell, just that it's just in her own way about the importance of cooperation. So what she used to tell that when you make the fire, because there's no electric stoves, so then you have to make fire to cook and all to keep warm. And then when you make fire, so using that, she said that if you have only one log, one wood, it would be hard for you to burn. And then when you add 2 or 3 and like that, it will burn. The fire will be more easily. It will grow. It will burn. So the idea is that if we just ourselves, it will be very hard to flourish. More people around. So that was, this is kind of our grandmother's wisdom, of course, in all cultures all around the world. But certainly the science, also seem to be showing the same thing. So, since you do want to do meditation, what I like to do quickly go into it now is to talk a little bit about this protocol and the steps leading to this transition. Of course, that I drew this from this Lobsang tradition, particularly, and also using His Holiness the Dalai Lama's own work, like Ethics for the New Millennium, that was already written by 2002-3. His Holiness had spent so much time in distilling those very crucial, important human values that are universal, like compassion and so forth, and articulated it well in a voice of his own vast knowledge in this field. So where he clearly recognizes that compassion is something that we as human beings, we have in our biology, in our genes. This is biologically given, that the level of compassion that is of the biological level of compassion. We see that in the rats, in the birds, in the monkeys and so forth, certainly in the humans, that we have the mother's love and caring for her child or the good friend towards us. It's in our biology, that this is something that the nature has designed. So obviously, without that, we would not have survived as a species. So it's there. But as Einstein said, that it is quite limited. We need to expand it, and then that's the. When it comes to expanding, that's the deliberately kind of this, utilizing this evolved brain. Fortunately, at this, over the last several, 1,000 years, the human brain has exploded. Our capacity to think forward, to think back, and to reason and bring different perspectives. That as this, you see this happening in our close relatives, in the primates and so forth, but in the human, this prefrontal cortex has kind of evolved apparently in the last 35, no, it couldn't be 35, but anyway, last, how many thousand years, that it has. So what it tells us that we can utilize this capacity to reshape our thinking, with that reshaping of our perspective and so forth leads to different sets of feelings and emotions and to behaviors and so forth. So therefore, that's what His Holiness called the compassion that can be deliberately cultivated. This is drawn, as he draws from Lamrim and Lojong, that I have drawn from this tradition. So when we think of meditation, often we think meditation is like sitting still, it's like concentration. Concentration is one part, certainly, when it comes to really immersing into certain information, that you can cultivate a certain perspective, and then you can, kind of zoom on that and sit with that to infuse your heart and mind deeply with that kind of insight perspective. But the initial cultivation of such perspective it requires certain process of examination, reflection, carefully observing, and that's what's called the analytical meditation or the cognitive process. So in the Lojong traditions, that involves extensive usage of these analytical reflective processes. It's drawn from that tradition. There are 6 modules, as I mentioned, in this, like that. How many of you are meditators? So most of you are meditators, that obviously, so you would be familiar with attention stability, like the cultivation of our capacity to be present, to where our mind is not like Chinese yo-yo, like the one moment here, another moment gone. Even when we are trying to drive the state, because if our mind is all over somewhere, then we will have accidents. So for same thing, the mental capacity to be present, this attention stability has tremendous benefits, at all dimensions of our life. And then there are many scientific studies that do show our capacity for attention is how important they are. So we begin with that. That the second part is what's called the present moment awareness. That is simply becoming more acquainted with our own inner world, if you will, inner dimension, the different thoughts, feelings, emotions, and so forth. If we were to work and reshape and change certain habit patterns, emotional patterns, so forth, if we have no clue about that, how can we change? So first we need to have a clear awareness of those. So it's the second part has to do with that. Self-compassion is a major part. When you think of the compassion for others, without the compassion for ourselves, if we are so critical of ourselves, so harsh on ourselves, so if we see no good in us, it would be very hard to see goodness in others, to have compassion for others, and so forth. So self-compassion is something that I get in the recent years, that a lot of studies about the self-compassion and how this would be helpful. So self-compassion is when it comes to expanding compassion for others, there is the fourth module, which is a very active part, that has to do with impartiality. We are living and seeing the kind of some of the real impact of not intentional partiality, probably unintended. That what's happening in the Ferguson, what we see, we're seeing all these the huge kind of social difficulties that are unfolding in American scene now, or on the more on religious lines, what's happening internationally with the this ISIS and so forth and so on. This excessive loyalty to one's own group, and the creating that certain partiality, blinding, becoming blinded to others' needs and interests and so forth. It's not healthy. And then now we're living in the 21st century as a living beings. The world has become just really small. It's shrunk that we interact with others at every part of the world. With the diverse kind of backgrounds, from cultural to religious, ethnic, and then socioeconomic, and so forth and so on. How can we afford to have this kind of excessive loyalty to our own, whether it's the national loyalty, excessive national, religious, ethnic, socioeconomic, and so forth? It's just outdated. It's not something that is helpful. So, like Einstein was saying, we need to have a very new manner of thinking if the humanity is to survive. That is the time now. If we were to survive, really flourish as a human being, that we need to have this new way of thinking, that this excessive loyalty has to be dismantled, to see us as one humanity. That is the solidness that Dalai Lama calls about, recognizing the one humanity, that we are all. And so that's a way to kind of dismantle this partiality. And then there are very specific practices for kind of relating to others. That making one big in-group, that whole humanity as the family. That if we can see that common, the binding, the common kind of factors that we are all, at one level, that we are all the same as humans, or most importantly, sharing the same aspirations to be happy, to flourish, and to avoid aggression, suffering, and so on. That this is, as it's extremely precious, that our lives are driven by the pursuit for better quality of life. The happiness may not capture for many, just think that it's just a kind of highlighted. But happiness, if you think of the flourishing, that quality of life, the flourishing where work-wise, relationship-wise, health-wise, mental, and so forth, if that's the quality of life, the happiness, then we're all seeking, that quality of life and to avoid the less quality of life, right? The suffering, when we call it the distress. That's true of me, that's true of you, that's true of everyone, that's true of someone in my family, that's true of someone who is a stranger to me, that's true of someone who is even difficult. So can we utilize our mental capacity to actually kind of go beyond our temporary differences to embrace others from that fundamental equality of they have this fundamental aspiration to be happy and to be free inside. If we can relate to others from, see others from that perspective, we identify with others. And identifying with others is the way for compassion. That we know that as cancer survivor or someone surviving from kind of addiction will have a whole different way of relating to someone who is struggling with addiction or just diagnosed with cancer. Than someone who didn't have this personal experience. When you can relate to others, see others, identify with others, that's where that other doesn't become just someone unrelated to other, but rather others and us merge there. That's the way of the empathy, and that's why the Franz de Waal, who is the leading evolutionary biologist, has written extensively about the evolutionary roots of empathy. He talks about the identification is the strongest portal for empathy. And then can we expand our the identification with other people who are different, who look different from us, who we don't have immediate, relationship and so forth, but can we see we are all the same. So that's it. And then the other part is that when it comes to compassion, we know that compassion is easy towards those who are endearing to us, right? That's why a small child with big eyes and big head, whether it's a human or animal, that if they are struggling, our heart goes out immediately. They're so endearing, they present so beautifully. And then, the evolutionary scientists, they do talk about that, why the kids have these big eyes and big heads and like that. It's a nature's way of kind of inviting that our attention for them, otherwise they won't survive. Endearment is a great the source for igniting or eliciting our empathy and compassion. And we know that from those of you who have children, you no need to say that how you feel about your children. They are so endearing to you. So therefore, that their health, their difficulty, but you become so important that to you. You will respond to, you will empathize with that. So endearment is what, that this sense of tenderness, sense of closeness, is really the catalyst for empathy and compassion. But how can we expand our endearing feeling towards people who are kind of strangers, or people who are nasty to some extent, become competitors, and us, like that. You could do on some level that see the common humanity. We are all the same. That can do some work. But further, how can, and that is in the Lojong literature, the strategy presented is that if we can, deliberately, actively, if we can attune to the benefits we receive from them, if we can attune to our interdependence, how we are benefited by others, that would, activate our deep biological, resource that is the billions of years of kind of making. That is the enduring kind of feeling towards others. That's we know from we just have to look in our own experience or in the nature that reciprocity is a huge factor in gluing us together, presenting us in the pathway. Imagine that if you are, stuck in a kind of, somewhat isolated, road somewhere, where it's getting dark, and then you are, your car has flat tires, and then there are people, passing by, driving, and nobody stops. And then finally someone stops. You have no idea who this person is, never seen. And then ask, can he or she get you some help, and helps you put the, tire back, and then you are able to drive home safely. A week after, you are in a restaurant having, meal, and then this person walks in, to have the meal. Also, you catch this person's side. Think about what your heart will be going through, what your facial expression will be. That innate, capacity is to you have a smile. You will have a feeling of warmth. That this person will immediately, that be felt with the tenderness. Why? Because of the help that we received when we were a week earlier in a kind of rather precarious situation. Do you agree? So that's what the anthropologists call about, that when you talk about the altruism, the reciprocal model of altruism, when you try to understand that why do animals and so forth kind of extend help towards each other. And this is very clear that even in the animals you see that those who give some help to others, that others naturally, it's not calculation, etc. This person gave me help and now I should do it. No, it's building the biology. This is the innate, that's how the nature has favored, and that this is calculated kind of stretching out like that. So we can tap into that. It's incredible, powerful mechanism that is part of our biology to utilize our brain, the power of thinking power, to see how we are interdependent with others. And then, there are many ways of doing that. Each day, if we, first of all, that all of us, that it's for sure that none of us would have been here if we did not have caregivers when we were infants, right? Our mothers, if they were reckless and completely didn't care when we were in the womb, that we could have been in a much worse, even if we survived, but that in the initial years, that somebody, whether our parents or other, the caregivers, they're caregiving. And then, all along, the people who provide us education made it possible. But when you think of that, it's a miracle, that we are where we are, how, that functioning and well. But it comes, on the shoulders of many, many, many others. We have to go there If we can go there, our feeling about others will change. You know, the same thing like that person extending help. So we can utilize it. We can take even one comfort, one, like the lunch you had today, or the electricity you have in your house, the heating you have in your house, the road that you used to drive. Anyone, comfort that we utilize, we can, if we carefully think about it, it connects us with a vast number of, not just human, animals, nature, and so on. And what we need to do is that to take time to attune to that, reflect and attune. And then to the extent that we attune to that, reflect on that, there will be a certain degree of conviction. That's what we need, and to deal with that. Now, if you can see one event, like it's a shirt or the sandwich that we said, that how, even that is seemingly insignificant, single comfort that is due to so many other beings. Now, each day, for us to live one day, how many resources we depend on? How many? Hundreds each day. We need the food, we need water, we need clean air, we need house, electricity, gas, so on and so on. I mean, we need to have the, the certain, if we are working, job and so forth. I mean, and then also, people around. Think about if there are no people around. If we're just, that nobody who can, say how are you, or just, have a conversation with us, and so forth. We will wither, just literally like a flower that without the oxygen, the sun rays and so forth. Same thing that we human beings, our other people are so important. Even in the bad, not necessarily very encouraging kind of the very, praising, just having someone. There's no wonder. That's why they say that after capital punishment, the most dreaded punishment is the solitary confinement. I watched a program on television recently that, those people in the solitary confinement who have been for months, they talk about how difficult it is. It makes them insane. Right? Just to catch a glimpse of someone, without that, it's literally kind of without. So we don't think about this. We take this for granted each day. The reflection, contemplation has to do with more, and utilize our capacity to think and reflect, to attune to these facts, these realities. And then as you attune to this, it will naturally make us more, that those other people will become more endearing. And that's what we need, that it's in the feeling of endearing, there is a feeling of warmth, feeling of tenderness, so crucial for our health and well-being, but also the continued better relationship towards others. So we need to do some meditation. So I don't need to talk much about it. So why we begin with by attention stability is basically that if you think of this, this is Galileo, by the way, that looking at the Jupiter and then seeing this a couple of moons around the Jupiter, back in the 1500s or whenever it happened. You know that it's that seeing that changed the way that how we think about our place in the universe. Yeah? From geocentric to heliocentric view of the universe. And with that came all the other explorations with the incredible universe that we understand, or the microscopic levels of, but it had to come with this lens that was kind of, adjusted and powerful enough to reveal what naked eyes could not reveal. Same thing, if we were to, utilize our inner resources of the inner universe in ways to enrich our life, together with the external exploration and the insights in medicine and so forth and so on, all this internal. We need to have a clear internal awareness also, and for that we need the microscope, inner microscope, that is the attention. That the mind that is balanced and clear and focused. And that's why we begin with the attention stability. And then of course with that you can see different patterns, different emotional patterns and so forth and so on. And that's where then we can begin to work. So that's why we begin with that. The process is quite straightforward how to cultivate attentional stability. It may seem very mechanistic or very rudimentary in many ways, but the benefits are tremendous, even in this basic first step itself. That because many skills are being cultivated. How you do that is like training an elephant, wild elephant. A wild elephant can be quite destructive, but you can easily train by finding its post, tying it with a strong rope, and then that attentive trainer that can, make appropriate adjustment when the elephant tries to run one way or another. Try similarly to keep bringing it back to the post again and again. Elephant learns to not just, be on a rampage. Same thing, our mind, that is just constantly just jumping like a monkey from one thing to another and reacting from one, worries and fears and so forth and so on. If we were to find some way to, bring that kind of the composure, the mind to be, more balanced and trained, we can do that by, that initial training. By that kind of anchoring it in the present moment with the breath, and then keeping it there with the mindfulness, sustaining the awareness of the breath, that's the role, and then with a certain introspective awareness, that attentive trainer kind of thing, that when the mind, our attention wanders off to something, notice without judging, without reacting, and then briefly, gently come back to the breath. And just by doing this, the mind becomes more and more, stable, more relaxed. And simple training like this, it gives you this enhanced capacity to be present. Our mind are more present. Whatever we are doing, just not with the breath. If you are cooking, you are eating, you are driving, you are talking to, you are reading, you are performing surgery, whatever you are doing, if the mental quality is better, then you do it better, right? It also allows us to, the process allows us to have greater awareness of our different thoughts, reactions, and so forth, because in the process of keeping in the present with the breath, involve, that introspective awareness when the attention goes to somewhere or not. So you are better aware. So in the day-to-day life, if there are so many times that there will be different triggers, that impulses would arise in us, that some people, maybe it kind of trigger certain anger, others maybe fear, others maybe resentment, or all kinds of rise, but if we can notice, if we are better in becoming aware of them, when they are just impulses, we can actually, notice and let it go. Give it space. And if you have trained for that, then it would be like that. You notice the sparks, when there are only sparks, it's much easier to put them out, instead of when there are big forest fires. Then it's too late. They would have consumed so much of our health and relationship, like the forest fires. So this way, it's a practical kind of benefit, training, whatever degree that we can do in the real, and it gives a flexibility, flexibility that when we notice our attention went to something in the past or the future, and then we notice kind of suspending judgment, come back to the breath. It's literally creating that flexibility. When actually we do, find ourselves reacting, when we notice, it will be much easier to give that space, letting be to come back. So, without having to escalate, that there's some triggers to kind of leading us to measure emotional or the drama and so forth. Of course, in the practice of compassion, if the compassion practice has to be the ultimate goal, it has to do with our capacity to feel endearing towards others. And so we need to have a certain kind of appreciation for that quality of kindness, compassion in someone's kind of, without judging, attending, paying, giving the attention to us, right? So therefore, we begin with what is called the resting in the moment of nurturance. Not that all of us can find a moment to connect with that moment, whether in our childhood, whether we are cared by our parents, or other times, like in some difficult times when you went to a doctor, when without knowing whether it's something is wrong, and the doctor examines you very assuredly and nicely, and how nurturing it is. Or a friend who comes and talks to you when you are down and then you are feeling that is, well, you are lost somewhere that you don't know where to go, and then somebody you ask, and then they take a moment to take time to tell you where to go. And all those small moments can be incredibly important. And so it's when kind of connecting with the moment of nurturance, not necessarily a huge moment of nurturance. These random acts of kindness that we have received from those we can connect with that. And if we have those memories that were really embraced by our mother or the father or the other caretakers or the teachers and like that, you can kind of place yourself in that moment, or others, and then feel how you feel. Your warmth, sense of warmth, sense of calm, sense of security. And let that warmth just wash you completely, soak your whole body and mind, to then to get a sense of how valuable it is that someone carries this, so that it can inspire us to embody those qualities also. And then with that we can begin the meditation. So these are some of the things that I just wanted to share. If you like to take a brief moment to just to go to the restroom or just to stretch, maybe then we can come back and do some meditation. Thank you. So it's going to be a brief one, and we will complete at 4:30. The Rinpoche is giving teachings here, so I think that tomorrow he's going to be teaching. But about this, if you have questions and like that, we can discuss. I will be here. If you are not in a hurry, please stay afterwards, and then I hope that we can continue in the future to continue with the discussions. We will begin with a brief chanting, and the chanting is, it basically goes like this. May the compassionate beings, the teachers, bless us, or bless me, so that I can take upon myself the suffering, the misfortunes, difficulties of others. Not in the sense that we don't depressed with that, but to transform it into source of health and happiness and so forth, by sharing it with others, may all beings enjoy good health and well-being. So this is chanting about love and compassion, deepening love and compassion. So they will do a brief chanting, and then I'll do a guided meditation for this brief guided meditation. But just to get it in the spirit of love and compassion, the monks will lead into the chanting. Now let's take a moment where you've received a certain sense of nurturing, a caring, perhaps from parents or some other family members or friends, or even just from some random stranger at the moment of your own certain vulnerable situation or the uncertainty. Just take a moment to connect with that memory, placing yourself in that moment and attune to your own feeling in your heart, in your body, how you feel. That sense of warmth, sense of being safe as you feel, let that feeling just completely fill your body and your mind, just soaking your whole body and mind, leading to a deeper sense of calm, deep sense of feeling safe and secure. and to nurture, to cultivate, or to embody or enhance our capacity for love and compassion for others. Aware that we must relate to others from certain feeling of endearment, tenderness that must arise when we see our oneness of humanity, our oneness with others. And to see this clearly, we must have a more balanced and clear and stable state of the mind. So to enhance this attentional quality, just bring your attention to the present, to the breath, at the nostril or at the abdomen, where you can feel your breath most clearly. And then just for 5 rounds of the breath, as you breathe in and out, just one breath at a time. Just be in the present, aware of each incoming and outgoing breath. And by placing our attention, our awareness here in the present with our breath as we breathe in and out naturally, as our mind becomes somewhat calm and stable, let go of attending to the breath, but just simply direct the attention towards your own inner world, inner experience in the present moment, whatever form they unfold as thoughts, feelings, memories, and emotions, without choosing certain thoughts to arise or blocking others from manifesting. But just simply place your attention, directing it to your own unfolding feelings experienced right here in the present. Just to witness without rejecting, without pursuing. Let the mind be like the vast ocean with a deep stillness. Any thoughts, any feelings, hopes, worries, memories that unfold as you notice. Just simply witness without trying to suppress or hold on to them. Just relate to them like our ripples, the waves of our own mind. Like the waves on the surface of the ocean, as they gradually subside into the stillness of the ocean. As we simply witness these thoughts and feelings without fighting with them, without holding. A certain thought that we notice may gradually subside into the stillness of our own mind. As it happens, just rest your awareness in that stillness, in that space, between one thought and the next. As we connect with our deep aspirations, and just take a moment to attune to the fact that everyone here, to you, the people to your right and to your left, immediate right and left, or behind and front, and gradually everyone in this room, like us, they have the dreams, the goals. They hold as precious their happiness and freedom as we do. and the right to pursue these goals. Contribute towards our well-being, our comforts, our fulfillments. Let's take a moment to attune to embrace this reality of our interdependence. And as all want to be happy and to be free of suffering. Allow the sense of love and compassion to unfold in the sense how wonderful it would be if everyone is able to enjoy the better quality of life, happiness and flourishing. If everyone is free from anguish and suffering and dissatisfactions. May we all and all others be able to realize our goals of happiness, aspirations for happiness and freedom from suffering. May we all find greater peace and security. And may we in some ways be able to assist others, contribute towards others' well-being and the freedom from their suffering. Let's take a moment to dedicate the merits, the positive energies, any positive forces that have unfolded from our meditation here. Let's dedicate these positive energies to peace, healing, and happiness for all beings on this earth. Let's dedicate these positive energies for the peaceful and the resolution of many conflicts that are going on on this earth, in our own country here. For such conflicts, find peaceful resolution. And let's conclude the meditation by setting an intention here at the end to extend all these inner skills and insights that we have cultivated here in our everyday life. As we interact with others, may we find a moment to be mindful that how, like us, these other beings also want to be happy and free of suffering, and have the right to pursue their happiness and freedom. May we also be able to be mindful that directly or indirectly, intentionally or unintentionally, everyone that we encounter, they do touch our lives by extending the various help that we enjoy, whether we are aware of them or not. To have that kind of mindset, that perspective. Let's conclude by reciting a few mantras of compassion, or mani padme hum, just simply to reinforce our own deep inspiration, intention to deepen our direct compassion together with the monks. Mani.
Amen.
Thank you. And thank you so much for spending your valuable time with us this afternoon. So deeply, deeply thank you to all of you. I want to thank also Ara and Sylvia and all their families for hosting us here, giving us this opportunity year after year. So we are very, very thankful, and we want to, of course, dedicate this any merit from here for your well-being and also flourishing of health and well-being of the family. I want to thank our very good friends, Marsha and Harman here. Marsha has been struggling with health, and we want to dedicate this for continued good health and to live for many years. And of course, that's what both Marsha and Harman for their flourishing and health and well-being. And our good friend here, Teresa, also, and her daughter, friends for many years. So we really cherish all your friendship and support. And thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you.